So I think I scared everybody last week when I told you all to take your time with your homework, and I really wanted to see your best work because only two of you turned in your homework. And I did get a couple of people who asked for an extension, and I have no problem doing that. And the two that turned in their homework, I probably wish they hadn't because I kept marking it up and sending it back. But I do think it's a great way to learn. I can only go over the overall picture when I'm teaching the class, but to get that one-on-one feedback about the things that you're doing that maybe you could do a little bit differently, I think is really a great way to learn. So get your homework in when you can, and I'll make sure I get back to you with feedback. I know that I also said yesterday that I was going to be out all day today, so I think that helped everybody buy a little bit of time too. So a couple things I just wanted to go over before I actually got into tonight's class. Just some things that I came across this week, humorous things, useful things. I don't know if any of you on the call have signed up for the NRWA Facebook page where members can communicate with each other. But if you haven't been on the page, there was a very humorous article that went around this week about working from home. And I encourage you, if you're on the Facebook page, take a look at it. If you're not, you'd like to read it, I'll be happy to send you a copy of it. But it definitely brightened my week. Another thing I wanted to share with you, and I'm going to bring this website up on my screen here. I've been hired by our local Department of Social Services to do a class for their staff on business writing. So I was feeling a little overwhelmed, like how do I approach the subject of business writing? The only thing that I really write is resumes, and these people aren't going to be there to learn how to write their resumes because their employers are paying them to be there. So there's a website called Udemy. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, Udemy. It's a website where you can go on and you can actually take online classes, and they're anywhere from like $10 to $300. And I found a class on business writing, which I sat through all day yesterday and took copious notes. And what really surprised me is I've put this course together just kind of on the fly based on what I've learned over the years with resume writing and what seemed logical to me. But what really surprised me is how much this business English or business writing class really mirrored the things that I've been sharing in class. And one of the resources that the instructor passed along is the one I have up here on my screen, plainlanguage.gov. The number of resources on this page is absolutely phenomenal. So if you have a chance, take a look at plainlanguage.gov and start flipping through and looking at some of these different resources that are out there. But I wanted to bring up and share with you this one particular page because it really speaks to everything that we're covering in this course and really speaks to what it means to write effective resumes. So this particular page, as you can see, he's breaking down what are the things that define plain English. And this was the major theme of this class that I took was write in plain language, write in plain English, write the way that we speak, plan out what you're going to write before you start writing it. As you can see here, know your audience. I've talked a lot about that. Know what you're going to say. Organize your thoughts logically. Avoid repetition. And then he even goes on talking about use active voice with strong verbs, use short sentences. Of course, he says personal pronouns, which are only assumed in our writing as resume writers, using concrete, familiar words, no surplus words, no jargon. even when he starts talking about the layout, which is what we're going to be talking about in next week's class, he had a whole lesson about writing headlines, and that is really what we're going to be talking about tonight, is writing the headline, writing the summary. And in business writing, we refer to it as the executive summary. But even when he was talking about that, I was very pleased that he kept referencing that acronym that I shared with you in our very first class, AIDA, Attention, Interest, Desire, Action, and that we should always keep that in mind through our writing. So, as I say, it was just really nice to have someone come at it from the angle of business writing in general, and then take it back to our level as professional resume writers, and how much professional resume writing is similar to business writing, and how the rules still apply. One of the statements that he made, too, that I thought was very telling was, he said that using complex, flowery language suggests that you're either uncomfortable with your topic or uncomfortable with your own writing style. And I think that's another really important lesson for resume writers, because as I even look back to when I first started writing, there were in the beginning that sense that I need to be elaborate in my language. I need to be expressive. I need to use jargon and phrases that I saw other people use. And as you become more and more comfortable with the writing and more comfortable with the topic, the industry you're writing about, the occupation, you'll find that it flows a little bit easier. It's easier for you to write in the language of your clients. And he even gave the example of how would you talk to your friend? That's the way we should be writing. He said, for example, would you say to your friend, this weekend we embarked upon a challenging journey in order to access the place at which we would spend our vacation? Would you say that, or would you say we went on vacation? So really good tips that he had in that class, and I wanted to be able to pass those along to you. So before I launch into the presentation for this evening, let me just see if there were any information that anybody wanted to share, any questions you had, any inquiries about the homework assignment before you dive into it. But let me just kind of run down the list here and give everybody an opportunity to say what that is on their mind. Anything that maybe you came across this week that you'd like to share with the group. So, Christine, I saw that you came in through my email. Are you on the line yet?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. So I know I got your email, and you indicated that you were getting your homework in. Is there anything that you wanted to share with the group tonight, or any questions you wanted to ask?
Well, I did want to ask, I know that, you had presented the method of doing the kind of who, what, when, and where, when we're presenting the accomplishments, but I was curious, is it acceptable to also just write out challenge, action, and result, and kind of
Yes, it is. Yeah,
okay.
You mean actually creating those categories on the resume?
Yes.
Is that what you're asking? Yes. It's a very effective strategy. As a matter of fact, one of the homework assignments that came in did identify the word result at the beginning of each of those accomplishment statements. But yeah, it's a nice technique, Christina, and I'm glad you brought it up. If you're not clear on what she's saying, it's where you're actually just calling out, here was the challenge, this was the action that the client took, and then here's the overall result. And you can break out all three categories, or you can just hone in and actually label it result. So yeah, good question. Thank you. Doug, how about you? Anything to share? Anything to ask?
No, I took that test that you sent out, and like you scored, got 4 out of 5 or whatever, got one wrong. It was tough.
The parallel structure.
Yeah,
yes.
It was tough.
Daily Writing Tips will send out a exercise every day, and there's always 5 questions. And it is rare that I get all 5 of them correct, and it's very humbling.
Yes,
it's
indeed.
very humbling because I thought I was really pretty good at grammar. Yeah, how many did you get right then, Doug?
I got all but one.
You got all but one too.
The one I didn't get right, I read the explanation, still didn't understand why.
Well, maybe we'll have to have a discussion about that one. Yeah. Parallel structure is definitely one that boggles a lot of minds, and it's very difficult to explain to people, too, when they're making a parallel structure error. So the more you practice, the better you'll get.
Yeah.
I know Tiffany Bidding's not on the line. Sheila, you didn't join yet, did you? And Ronnie said she wouldn't be here. LJ just got to Ohio, so I knew she wasn't going to get on the line. How about you, Suzanne? Are you here? Do you have anything you wanted to share or ask?
No, I'm good for now. Thank you, though.
Okay, you're welcome. And Tiffany?
I'm okay.
You're okay for right now? Brenda, did you get to join us, Brenda?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, anything that you, interesting things you'd like to share with the group tonight or questions?
The parallel structure had me struggling a bit, but I'm clearer on it. I don't know if I'm crystal clear, but I am clearer on it.
Well, that's good, Brenda, because I'm not crystal clear on it either. And as Doug was saying, that little exercise only had 5 examples, and even Doug and I only got 4 out of the 5 correct. Yeah, the trickiest thing with parallel structure is when you have a series in a sentence, begin by reading each item with the noun or with the verb. So usually your sentence is going to start out with a verb. Oh, I forgot to turn off my cell phone. It'll start out with a verb, and then you'll have a series of items after that. Read the verb, and then one item in the series. Read the verb again, and the next item in the series. And usually that's enough to help you to pick up where there's a dysfunction, where the verb just doesn't seem to match the item that you're reading. And in most cases, it's usually only one thing that somebody has that wasn't parallel. So, keep practicing. It'll come to you eventually. And I did just put my phone on vibrate. And then, Mark, are you on the phone? Okay. All right. Well, good. I am going to put this on mute, and I'm going to pull up the slides here. Maybe I'll pull up the slide first to make sure that you're all seeing it on my. Okay, so you have a full screen up here?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, good. Well, goodbye for a minute. I'm going to just be talking to myself here for a little while. Okay, so we've been kind of building Candace's resume, but we're doing it in a little pieces, starting with what normally is the easiest is create your outline, decide what headings you're going to put in there. We worked a little bit with her education section and decided how we were going to handle that. Then we began taking apart her professional experience, and then we started breaking out the accomplishments. So even though the headline and the professional summary are the thing that are at the very top of the resume, it's the thing that you're going to write last, because you use your planning as a tool to figure out what you're going to put in there. But being able to go back and craft that professional headline and summary is going to depend a lot on what you came up with for your content. I'm getting in trouble. My mouse doesn't want to go where it's supposed to tonight. Get that to flip. So things that we're going to cover tonight, we're going to talk about what the headline is and the professional summary and why they're important to the resume. We'll talk a little bit about the strategy. How are we going to plan what goes in there before we write? Again, always planning, thinking ahead. Don't just jump in and start writing. Each document, you want to plan it through. We're going to talk about what makes up a strong headline and a professional summary. And I'm going to show you a lot of different options for the headline and professional summary. And actually, the supplemental materials, no, I did not send out samples yet because I want to see what samples the class comes up with. So these are just the basics that we're going to go over. So, let's talk about the headline and summary as a whole. With the old resume format, we always began with an objective statement. And in the beginning, objective statements were pretty clear. They were pretty directed. Over the years, they became more and more convoluted. Clients didn't want to commit to an objective. Resume writers didn't think it was important to commit to an objective. So then objectives started to take on a tone that really meant nothing to anybody. Plus, the objective was always speaking from the perspective of the client. It wasn't taking the employer's needs in mind. So the professional objective was saying, this is what I want. Now the shift is towards, this is who I am. This is what I do. This is how I do it. This is what sets me apart, what makes me unique, what it is that I have to offer. So it really... The idea of a headline, and this was also very telling in this class I just took, is that whole idea of capture attention, generate interest, create desire, and inspire action. And when you think about newspaper articles and blog posts and any written communication, flyers, things that begin with headlines that are geared towards grabbing your attention and speaking directly to you about what you're offering. And that is probably one of the biggest shifts in resume writing, is beginning from that focus of professional marketing, grabbing the attention of the reader, telling them why it's compelling for them to read what you're about to offer, and then leading them through it. So it answers those two questions. What do you do, and what can you do for me? Because when you think about your hiring authority, they are out there trying to buy a commodity, and that commodity is our client and our client's skills. So we have to advertise different than what we've done in the past. Again, the focus is all about sales. It's all about the employer. So when you look at a strong professional headline, it usually will communicate a unique value proposition. And that's a very old marketing term. So when you think of a unique value proposition, there's really these three elements that make up that value proposition. One is the business driver. The primary reason that the employer would want what the client's offering. You have to keep that in mind. The things that the decision makers really care about. So, some of the key words here that we focus on and that, tend to resonate with employers, things that are important to them: customer satisfaction, compliance, being in compliance with the regulations, with the government, with the finances, with their shareholders. Operating costs, that's very important to businesses. Gaining market share, being productive, and then retaining employees. So these are very strong drivers for employers. And if you can position your client as being a solution to one of these problems, or being a driver, an enabler to providing one of these things, you've already communicated value to the employer. So keeping that in mind. Another thing that you want to keep in mind with a strong value proposition is that the words illustrate action. They illustrate a feeling of forward motion, of advancement, of offering something beyond the status quo. So that's where you start using words like the ones that are here, and we integrate them throughout the resume, and we focus on them in our accomplishment statements, but we also want to focus on them when we're developing our headline, developing our summary. Words like increase, accelerate, eliminate. Now, what I have found, and this is kind of going back to that earlier comment I made about jargon, over the years, some very interesting words have gotten introduced into resume writing. And as a result, people are picking them up and they start using them, I guess with this sense of, without realizing it, that they're thinking, well, this word is going to imply movement. And the two words that come to my mind, and they're really becoming one of my own personal pet peeves, is catapulted. They catapulted revenues, and championed. So something is starting to happen with our language where we're beginning to take verbs or nouns and we're turning them into action words. So again, remember, write the way our clients talk. I personally have never met anyone that told me that they catapulted their income or that they championed an idea. So be careful when you're reading other resumes and going, oh, well, that was a clever word. I've never used that one. I'm going to start using it. Because it, again, begins to give that feeling that maybe the writer isn't really that comfortable with their writing. Let's stick with plain English. It resonates more with the majority of our customers and our audience. And then the third element of the value proposition is that a strong value proposition includes metrics. So we can look at time frames, we can look at dollar amounts, and we can look at percentages. Those are usually the metrics that we talk about when we're writing in our resumes, is focusing on one of those. So as you develop your professional headline and your professional summary, you want to think about using these three elements to integrate it in there. Now, the tricky thing is you have to be able to do it in as few words as possible, as concisely as possible. And in this course that I took yesterday, when he started talking about headlines, he actually said the ideal headline is 12 words or less. And it was interesting because when he started directing my attention towards different newspaper headlines, you find that is pretty much the norm. 12 words or less, that you're trying to summarize what is this client offering and what is their unique value proposition. Takes more time than writing an objective that says seeking a challenging career with a growing company that can use my skills and experience. So as professional resume writers, it's definitely something that can distinguish us from those that are a little more novice about what really goes into effective marketing. So here's a quotation that I picked up years ago when I went to a marketing full-day webinar. And I think this is also a very true statement about the headline and what we're going to talk about tonight, that optional tagline. The headline accounts for up to 80% of the success of your advertising. 80%. If you can't grab them with that and drag them in to make them want to read the rest, you're going to lose them. So it's this quote says it's the ad for the ad. It has to capture attention and convert that attention into interest. And it's what you say first. It's the first big benefit that you offer. So putting a lot of pressure on you here tonight, but the headline is just such a critical piece to the resume. So when we look at the old resume format, headlines typically were things that were a heading to something called qualifications or something called professional highlights or summary of qualifications. And when I read a headline that says summary of qualifications and it immediately follows the client's name and address, the first question that comes to mind is qualifications for what? You didn't tell me what this person does yet. You didn't tell me what it is that they're qualified to do. So the third example that I gave you is identifying, well, what is it that this person, how do they brand, what is their identification? Well, they're a business development specialist. And then the tagline is that unique value proposition. What is it that this person is offering that distinguishes them from the other candidates? And the reason you're writing it last is because until you've gotten all that information concrete in your mind from the resume, it's hard to be able to go back and summarize that into a dozen words or less. So as we go through here, then, I just wanted to share with you a lot of different examples. Here's some ones that I clipped from different resumes, either that I wrote or I saw that other people wrote that I really, resonated. They were good examples. So this first one with the senior account executive, remember that one element was using words that illustrate movement, that illustrate going beyond the status quo. So what I really love with this one is it starts with the word transforming. And what is it that they're transforming? They're transforming finance. And what does it look like when it's done? A streamlined strategic business partner. So he's talking about transforming the finance organization within the company. The second example is not really a tagline statement, but it is just identifying characteristics that define that human resource manager, that director. So they're little brands that identify key things that this individual is offering. That global business savvy, accomplished in all HR functions, and technically sophisticated. It's setting the tone. It's introducing the resume. So when the reader dives into that resume, they're going to be looking for examples of this individual working on a global basis, working with international companies, working with companies that have offshore sites. They're going to look for examples of them working in multiple HR functions, not just one. And they're also going to look for examples of this client using technology. So it becomes the driving force for what is in the resume and leads the employer on. The third example is where the individual is identifying their general area of expertise, technical sales, and then breaking it down into key functional areas. This, again, sets you up so that you're able to focus different areas of the resume on field sales, on business development, on territory management, and then on product training. And then here we have a tagline that is stating what this individual's brand is, what sets them apart. So a lot of creative thinking needs to go into this. So when we look at individual characteristics of professional headlines and summary, some of the weaknesses that we see quite frequently, unclear positioning. We read it, we're not real clear what this person does, where they've been, what they're offering. Sometimes they're written in third person. Third person would be that, if I were going to use Doug here as an example, and I would say, Mr. Barnes has more than X number of years of experience doing this, and that. Completely subjective, and I'm going to show you a good example of that. Just a lot of nice statements, but there's nothing there to substantiate them. And I graded a NCRW test just last week that it had a lot of statements, but I didn't really get anything in there that resonated with me and said what this particular client was offering. The trite overused phrases, team player, proven record of, just phrases that have been overworked. They show up a lot in these headlines and summaries. Things that aren't substantiated. They're not backed up anywhere by facts, by metrics, by data. They're not keyword optimized. They give the impression that the writer didn't really know the occupation and didn't really know the industry. So the keywords aren't popping up. And then they don't have any unique value proposition. So this first example, it really illustrates very well a very weak headline. Because when you read it, it could apply to most anybody. So if you read that and think in your mind, okay, well, this person is a cashier at McDonald's, it would work. Or is this person maybe an executive of a company? It's really difficult to tell because we would hope that these characteristics apply to most anybody that's in the workforce. Any employee, we want to have good communication skills. We want them to be able to demonstrate strong conflict resolution abilities. We want them to deliver client satisfaction. We want them to build and manage teams or work with teams. So that's what I'm talking about when I say they're subjective. You know, they don't apply to any individual. They just kind of apply to everybody. And in the end, you don't really know what this person does or what they're offering. Here's another weak example. This one says successfully communicated company objectives built on structured concept achieving branch goals. That statement doesn't mean anything to me, and I'm sure it doesn't mean a whole lot to you either. Branch, I mean, I'm not sure what that branch was, but it's just not clear. So we don't know what the occupation and industry are. We don't see any strong keywords in here. A lot of soft skills, you know, strong leadership, strong organizational, strong problem solving. The only metric we have in here is that they managed 18 direct reports. We don't even know what those direct reports job titles were. So no way to position this client when that's the information that appears at the top of the resume. So in order to be effective with creating a professional headline and summary, it's the same as when you're writing the resume. Plan it before you write it. Identify those reoccurring themes in the client's career and figure out a way to summarize them. Create that collection bin that I had you do in the first exercise and go back and revisit that. And then reflect on these ideas as you're writing. And then, as I said, always go back and write this piece last. You can rough it out, but to fine-tune it and massage it and make sure that it's supported by the information in the resume, you want to wait until you're done so that you can go back and you can actually massage that and get it down to where it's nice and tight. So if we look at the elements of a strong summary versus the weak, you've got that spot-on positioning. You can tell right away what the occupation is that the client's targeting and probably the type of organization or industry that they're targeting. A strong headline and summary also will include the years of experience. And a question often will come up about that. Well, do I include all the years of experience? Wonder if they were on the job 35 years or 20 years. You want to look at your overall strategy. It's not necessary to go back and identify the number of years all the way down to the last digit. You can always summarize. You can say more than 2 decades. You can say 20-plus years. You can, I think a safe number always was 18-plus. It's helpful because it helps the employer understand the extent of experience. And if you look at the majority of job announcements, many of them will tell you how many years of experience they're looking for. And if it's a fairly new grad, then it's okay to somehow pull that information in there, identifying that the years of experience may have been academic experience or internship experience, but helping to get a frame of reference so that the employer knows how much does this person know about this occupation, this industry. Usually a strong headline, it'll highlight the relevant areas of expertise, and you saw that in the previous ones. It'll focus on specific results. So having strong metrics up there in front, you'll probably go through your overall accomplishments and decide which ones do I really, really want to call out in the summary. Which ones best represent what my client has to offer, and is there a way I can summarize them at the top of the resume to create interest, to generate desire? And then facts, and more facts. Don't have your professional summary just be a lot of statements that could apply to anybody. Put a lot of facts in there. So here's some more of the essential elements. You're going to look at that unique value proposition. Is that clear? Is there something in that summary statement that tells the employer what your client is offering that somebody else may not be offering? And it's interesting, I had a client just this week who contacted me, and she said she went online to apply for a job, and one of the questions on the application is she had to write in 150 characters what made her unique. And I just thought it was really interesting that the employer was, even at the application stage, asking the client, what makes you unique? Why should I be hiring you? So, and my response to her was, don't get hung up on the idea that what they're asking you is, what are you offering that nobody else is offering? But it's, what is it that you feel you're offering that's of the highest value? It calls out distinguishing traits, something that makes your client different from the competition. It's filled with a lot of keywords, occupational and industry keywords. It should always be written in the first person, and I'm talking about the headline and summary, not just that headline. And it's also a place that you can integrate in some of those testimonials, some of those endorsements, maybe a quotation that came off of a performance review, maybe something that was on a LinkedIn profile. Or some of the examples I'm going to show you this evening are even examples of where the client is expressing their own philosophy, their own belief about business. So things that distinguish them. And then the final thing to take into consideration are these formatting options. How do you want to format this headline and summary? Where do you want to put it on the resume? What kind of font? Do you want to use a different font? Do you want to use font enhancements? Do you want to add graphic lines? Do you want to write it all as paragraphs? Do you want to write it as a list of bulleted items that distinguish the client? Or maybe you want to have a combination of the two. Do you want to include a core competency list? For a long time, that was a very popular part of the resume, is to create a list of key words that were areas of expertise or core competencies or key skills. And then there's another concept that may be new to a lot of you, and I'm introducing that tonight. It's another advertising concept, and it's something called the Johnson box. And this is, if you begin to notice advertisements when you look in magazines and newspapers, the Johnson box is actually a advertising technique where they create a little text box and they put it off to the top right of the headline. And it contains key information that promises a benefit. So I'm going to show you where you can use a Johnson box a little bit. Always keeping in mind that what we're talking about here are advertising techniques. It's all just about advertising and marketing. And you've been looking at ads your whole life. You've been looking at marketing. You know what kinds of things resonate with you. And now you have that ability to weave them into the documents that you're creating for our clients, which are nothing more than marketing documents. So that's, to me, the exciting part of the whole change in the resume writing is this whole headline and summary. It forces us to be creative. It forces us to think a little bit more from the perspective of the buyer than from the perspective of the client. So before I share examples with you, and we're probably going to even finish up a little bit early tonight too, because I usually build in time to go over homework, but I'm not doing that because I only have the 2 homework assignments. So before I go ahead and start sharing some examples, I just want to see what questions and comments are, currently on people's minds, because I just ran through a whole lot of stuff here. So okay, so I'm going to run through the list again here. Mark, did you get to join us yet? Okay. How about you, Brenda?
I'm just intrigued that you are absolutely a proponent of using marketing strategies. It's like, wow, that's right down my alley.
Well, very good. Isn't it funny, though, that we don't really think of the resume as being an ad?
Right.
Yeah, but it is.
Yep.
And it has to contain all the same elements of a good advertisement. Well, thank you, Brenda.
I talk to my clients all the time about me creating personal marketing documents for you.
Very good. Very good. It's probably a hard concept for a lot of them, isn't it?
Yes.
No, I just want you to put my work experience down.
Right.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Brenda. I appreciate that. How about you, Tiffany?
I was wondering if you could, I guess I didn't catch it, but the core competency skill list, what are the pros and what are the cons, or a couple?
Oh, you're right. I didn't really address that. Well, one of the pros is that it gets some good, strong keywords right up front. And when you think that the applicant tracking software is actually looking for words, and the higher they are in the resume, the more they're repeated in the resume, the more hits the ATS is going to give as it's grading the resume. So one of the advantages is pulling that information up front, drawing attention right away to the key areas of expertise the client has. The cons, the downside of it is that kind of twofold. One is, although the ATS likes to see the words being used in context has more value. And it kind of ties into the second con, which is many times writers will create these competency lists with a lot of strong words, but they're never used in context anywhere else in the resume. So now they're just words that anybody could put on their resume, and there is nothing to substantiate that the client really has that skill. So when you're creating a competency list, if you can effectively weave it in there without using up a lot of valuable real estate on your resume, then there's no harm in having it. But if you're having a big chunk of competencies that aren't substantiated with content, you're better off to just get rid of them. And I am seeing that as we're looking at modern resume design, they seem to be going to the wayside, those core competency lists. I'm not seeing as many of them anymore as what I used to when I would look at old resume books. So they seem to be going away.
So could you put something like, I don't know, key skills or something like your computer skills in that place instead? Would that be appropriate?
Well, you can do that. Yeah, you can do that. And one caution I have there is that, especially if you're working with people that are in IT, they list dozens of computer skills. And then when you really push them, they go, well, I had a class. I didn't really use that on the job. So one good strategy is when you're talking with your clients and you're thinking about putting together one of these lists, make sure that your client can speak to what's in the list. Mm-hmm. Ask them, did you use this skill in the job? Can you tell me about a time you used that skill? So that when you're putting it in the list, later on in the resume, it's being substantiated somewhere. I had a good example last week when I was working with someone who's in the real estate industry, and he had mentioned to me one day something about mergers and acquisitions. So I put it in his competency list, and he asked me, would you take that out? Because I think I'd really have a hard time speaking to that in an interview. Yeah, I had some involvement, but so use our clients as a guide too.
Yeah.
You know, don't just do it because you see other people doing it.
Right. Thank you.
Does that help?
Yes.
Okay. Suzanne, are you there? Did you have any questions?
No, it's just my head's kind of spinning because this is so different than the academic model.
Oh, yes. You're very true about that. Yeah. If you look at academia, they love to start out with an objective.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they're probably going to have a heart attack when you go back to your career center and say, no, they told me to do this. And they're going to go, oh. Well, good. Good luck on that then. Sheila, are you on the line? Okay. Doug, did you have anything?
I'm sorry, I'm here. No questions.
Oh, hi, Sheila. Did you have any questions or comments?
No, hearing the pros and the cons.
Okay.
That was interesting. Thanks.
Okay, you're welcome. And Doug?
No, I'm just interested in seeing some samples, and I may have questions after that.
Okay, yeah, and I'm going to show you some, and oh my God, there's so many, I can't even begin to turn them all up. And then Christina, how about you? Christina?
I was on mute. Sorry about that. I had to take you off of mute.
Oh, okay.
So my question for you is how you would handle a headline for someone who doesn't want to appear too senior or over-experienced for a role. So, for instance, sometimes titles might vary by company, and if someone has a VP title now, but the next role they're applying for is a director, would you just go with something generic like finance executive, or does it hurt?
You could do something like that. You could do a split. And I'm glad you brought it up, though, Christina, because one of the things that I tell my clients, and you want to tell your clients this too, is whatever headline you're putting on there, if you're identifying it as a job title or an occupation, tell your clients it's the easiest thing for them to customize to the actual position. So if they're applying to a job, they should change that headline to whatever the job title is. Mm-hmm. That's the easiest workaround. So if the employer is hiring, a senior director of finance, and you've written on their finance executive, well, have them switch it to senior director of finance. The employer picks it up and goes, "Oh, senior director of finance is just exactly what I'm looking for." It's an unconscious reaction. So we train our clients. Speak in the language that the employer is speaking in. I gave you a headline based on what you and I talked about, but that doesn't mean it's your headline for the rest of eternity. It's your headline for right now. Change it. Does that work?
See. Okay. So it doesn't matter if they've actually held that exact title before.
No.
Really
no. And think about, with LinkedIn profiles, if you do LinkedIn profiles, LinkedIn will automatically assign the headline as the client's current job title. And what we always want to tell our clients is you are not your job title. You are a particular occupation, a particular area of expertise, regardless of where you work and what that employer called you. And then you help them to identify, well, what is it? What are you, not what is your job title? It's a very subtle distinction that we can really help our clients to understand. Okay, good.
Perfect.
Well, I'm going to throw you guys back on mute again, and I'm going to run through. And, maybe they'll spur some ideas. There's a million different ways to do it. This first one here, and what I'm showing you is I wanted to give you snippets that included the letterhead, too. Not only so that you could see that there are some unique designs that you can work in with the letterhead, but in many cases, like in this first one, we've got the client's letterhead. They're identifying information. But just above the headline is her branding statement, her tagline. And as you can see with this one, this is her words expressing how she views herself in the workforce. That sometimes she leads, sometimes she follows, but she always surrounds herself with the right people to succeed. Those words came right from the client. It wasn't something that I put in there. And many times our clients can do that. I'm working with a young man right now who just graduated from college, and he got into an internship program where he was able to go to Ireland for a month and observe the legal system. And as I always do when I'm writing for clients, I start doing a lot of research. And I Googled this young man's name, just out of curiosity, and I landed on a web page where he was actually describing his internship. And at the beginning of the description, he made a comment about why he chose to study law when he was in college. And it was such an awesome comment that I put it at the top of his resume in his summary. And he emailed me today and he said, "Where did you get that quote from?" I don't even think he recognized it. So I went back to the website and I took a screenshot of it and I sent it to him. And I said, "You said it. Are you okay with it, including it in your resume?" So sometimes our clients say the absolutely most profound things when we're interviewing them, and they don't even remember saying it. And I think that's what happened with this particular client. I loved it when she said that, so I worked it in there. And then demonstrating that theme throughout the resume, the leading, being the director, following, being the team player, and then that ability to keep a lot of connections, a lot of collaboration, a lot of internal and external communications. That's the theme that was communicated in her resume. Then we got this other example, very clean, very concise, CTO, CIO, very easy to identify where to put this person. And then he is using this forward motion again, driving, innovation, companies that are on the verge of transformation and growth, a lot of forward movement, a lot of implying that this client is not happy with the status quo. Great terminology when you're working with an older worker, people that are concerned about that age discrimination. You read statements like that, typically they don't generate an image of somebody, who's 60, 65 years old getting ready to retire. It's somebody that's moving, somebody that is making change. This next one I grabbed a little bit out of the professional summary because I wanted you to also see how it gets worked into there. Now, this particular one was, I believe this came from one of the winners of the NRWA's ROAR competition, the Outstanding Resume Writer competition that we started. So this one's showing a little bit of elements with some creative formatting, as well as identifying, we've got the two roles, president or vice president, but here we've got global value creator. And we know right up front what industry he's targeting, medical devices, med tech pioneer. And look at those strong words, ignited revenue growth, performance, medical innovations, in difficult worldwide markets. A lot of information crammed into those few words about this particular client. Now, one thing I do want to call out on this one, being a meticulous proofreader, if you're using a serial comma, the comma before the word "and," it does not belong before an ampersand. So on this particular example, just make a mental note. If you're putting in an ampersand, do not put a comma before it. But then this one breaks it down even more. It tells us not only the industry and the market, the global market, but it breaks it down even more into privately and publicly traded companies and private equity firms and startups. and turnarounds. So really driving it down to be even more specific. And then look at these lines that are in the professional summary. This triggering international growth up to 6 times the domestic rate and 161% soar in profitability. I love this summary because the metrics are there. The unique value is there. This summary is not taking up a lot of information on the resume, but it is packed with value. Even calling out that unique value proposition of the global MBA from Stanford University. Now, we don't know. Maybe that MBA was earned 20 years ago, and we don't want to put that date on the resume. But we want to call that information out right up front. We don't want the employer to wait until they get to the end of the resume to find out that this person has a global MBA from a very prestigious university. So you put it up there. And then even that other additional line there, global background includes 9 years of in-country leadership spanning Europe, Middle East, Africa, and Asia. I haven't counted the words here, but I trust there are very, very few words in that summary, but every one of them delivers punch. Every one of them says what this client is offering. So it's a real great, strong example of a professional summary and headline. This one is doing that combination of the paragraph with the check boxes, with the bullets. And then there's a nice text box that is boldly calling out what the unique value is, what it is that this client is offering that nobody else has. Repeatedly delivered value to employees in excess of 10 times the salary. So this person is not only saying this is what I did, but what I did is 10 times more worth what you're going to be paying me. So you invest in me, you're going to get a return on your investment of 10 times over. The other thing that's so strategic about this is that text box falls in what's called the visual center of the page. When you pick up the document, it's where your eye immediately lands. So it's a very effective strategy this writer used of putting that text box where they did and putting in it what they did. And then you'll recognize that headline and those key words because they were in a previous example I gave you. But as you look through this, you're going to see, how many years of experience, what type of organizations they worked in, what some of their key contributions and accomplishments were. So it summarizes everything that's in the resume and brings it right up front. Another way to think about a professional strong summary and headline is consider that if the employer were to read nothing but that section of the headline of the resume, would they be compelled to call the client in for an interview? That's the goal that you're going for. Or would they be confused? Or would they be unexcited, turned off? So it's working towards grabbing that attention, pulling them in, making them say, I need to talk to this client. So here we've got another strong example that's using that combination strategy again of the paragraph and some bulleted statements. This is the one I showed you before with the strong transforming finance. Right up front, they're identifying that they're an MBA and a CPA. They've got more than 15 years of experience, and they identify what that experience is in. They call out those areas of expertise, and then they give some strong examples of what this client delivers. And if you notice there, even the key word that leads into that list says deliver. This is what I deliver. And then the hope is that the employer is going to look at that and go, well, that's exactly what I'm needing somebody to deliver. That's the problem that I need to be solved. And we want our clients to be able to communicate they understand the employer's problem. So here's an example of a Johnson box. This particular resume was one that I put together for a career change person. And as you can see here, this is a good example of using a core competency list that calls out key words that are relevant to the job that the person is applying for. And what you can't tell from this particular resume headline here is this individual was making a dramatic career change from direct customer service in the social services industry over to a sociology or a social research position. So we found words that were related to that. But the statement here in the Johnson box came right out of the DISC profile, creative and seeing challenges from different perspectives. And then the second part of that was where she was stating what her motivation was, why she was making this switch. So it positions her. It communicates a little bit about her brand. This particular summary falls weak in terms of not having metrics, but it's strong in some of the other areas. And part of the reason the metrics weren't there is because of the career change. So build in metrics when you can. But the metrics that were in her resume were things like administering medications to mentally ill patients and how many patients and how many different medications. That had nothing to do with the career change she was making. So, but the Johnson box hopefully will lead the employer to make an identification as to what the person is looking for without coming out and saying, this is my job objective. Here's one that those keywords are built into the first line of the actual paragraph, the first summary. And again, these words came out of the DISC profile. So those of you that are thinking of using DISC, great ways to steal words right out of that and build them in. And Candace even mentioned a couple in her profile, some strong words from the DISC. So you can build those in there. And then here's another combination where they're using, the paragraph and the bullet format. You're able to see years of experience. You're able to see areas of expertise. You're able to see the types of organizations they've worked for. So and even that, a little bit of what sets me apart. I thrive in a high pressure situation and enjoy being engaged across all levels of the organization. That probably also came out of the DISC profile. And so it's nice. I mean, when you're taking it out of DISC, you're not just making up something, but you're validating it with information that the client can say, yes, that's true. This one works a little bit differently in terms of it's not really an objective because the client may not have had that particular job title, but that's their focus. That's what they're targeting right now. And then rather than just saying, well, here's my qualifications for that, they're saying, here's the value that I offer. This is what I'm giving you that adds value to why you should hire me for that, as opposed to a more generic term like qualifications. And then on the right-hand side, the working knowledge of doesn't necessarily say that the person is an expert, because the more I look at this one, I believe this came from a college student that was just graduating. So Tiffany and anybody else that works at colleges, taking that terminology gives you an opportunity then to pull out some of the classes that the student took, skills that they put to work in the classroom, but maybe not in the workplace. So that's another way. This one actually even says combined studies in writing and literature. So I do believe this is probably a college student. We have an example here, somewhat like a Johnson box for the skill snapshot. I think this is another example of one of the Roar competition resumes that won. So rather than just saying marketing executive, I love this award-winning brand strategy. and marketing executive, identifies the types of organizations, startup, high growth, and mature brands, and then identifies the industries. And then the executive snapshot is calling out, here are some of the key things that I want you to know about this client. If you don't read anything else in the resume, I want you to know these 4 contributions that they made. And then we've got the various skills that they're bringing to the table. So just to go back to the question that Christina asked about competencies, there are pros and cons. Use them if they'll work effectively for you. If you're using up valuable space because you feel like you have to have them on there, then you may have to sacrifice them. You may have to, format them differently. This next one uses, again, a little bit more of a creative headline or a creative letterhead, integrates an image, the $sign along with his key functional area, banking, financial services professional. That's not really giving a job title, but it's definitely positioning him. We know where he belongs. We don't know at what level initially, but we do identify him with his industry right up front. And then, some of the words that work well here. I love the word dynamic a whole lot more than seasoned. I believe this gentleman was like 60-something, dual retired. Yeah, he was. He was retired from the military, and then he was retired from his second career, but he was ready for his third. So let's address the elephant in the room. The guy is over 65. He's worked a couple of careers. Okay, so what? Let's move on and talk about what he's offering. So a lot of strong words here about what he's offering. And again, this business philosophy came from him. This is what he said. He said, if you manage by the numbers, you get business success. But if you manage the people, then you get service excellence. And you need both. You need somebody that can manage the numbers and manage the people. And then if you were to read the resume, it says, and this is how I did both. And then this last example, which some people tell me is a little bit busy, and the more I look at it, I'm thinking maybe it is a little bit busy. But when I chose this, I like this one because it was really the beginning part was built very much around language that was in the DISC profile. And I wanted you to be able to see how well this writer integrated that language into the resume. So even up there in the letterhead section, those words provide revenue-generating sales leadership through actionable knowledge and a quality-oriented focus. They picked keywords from the DISC and they wove that into the tagline. And then the job title, Associate Director, Sales and Operations, doesn't necessarily mean that was a job title they held, but that is the position that they're seeking. And then those words that are in bold in the paragraph are words that came right out of the DISC assessment profile. But they're interwoven with some facts, like, where the company was. And then there's those key performance highlights. And I mentioned that last week. I said there are ways to take those key accomplishments from much earlier in the career and bring them up to the top of the resume. And this is one way to do that, is you create a highlight section under your summary, and you go back and you grab all the key things from the person's career, regardless of when or where it existed, and you bring them up front. Now, sometimes I've seen writers also identify in parentheses or somewhere where that accomplishment took place. So this one, I think, was probably all with the cellular telecom, because it seems as though the focus is on the numbers there. but that is a good strategy for working that in. So, this was Sharon Williams. She actually was a winner of the Tory Award. That's the one that the Career Directors International gives out. And as I'm looking at my notes now, this was given to the best new graduate category is what that resume was for. So she's won many, many different Tory Awards over the years for her resume design, strategy, and then, the actual content. So that's all the examples I had to show you tonight. If you take a look, if you have a chance to get the Modernize Your Resume book, the one that is the most recent examples that were compiled by Wendy Antelow and Louise Kurzmark, there's a lot of really nice examples in here. And as I mentioned in last week's class, many times when I can't get started, I'll just go find an example that inspires me, and I start by just typing that, and then I begin to massage it and make it work for my client. So don't try to create these in a vacuum. I'm going to guess that the majority of you on the call, if not all of you, probably have never taken a class in professional marketing, or if you did, it may have been a long time ago, or you might not have done a lot. So these are all marketing strategies. They're all about marketing. And if you can have an opportunity to learn a little bit more about advertising and marketing, it does make it a little bit easier. So lots of stuff, lots of examples. As I said, I could keep sharing them all night long, and I'd never run out. So I just wanted to hit some of the highlights with you tonight and share some of these. Your homework for next week then is going to be to go back and craft that section of Candace's resume. And then we're done working on her content. Next week we're going to start looking at actually the resume formatting. And as you saw with these examples tonight, formatting has gotten dramatically market-oriented too. So lots of changes in our industry, and they're really exciting, but they keep us on our toes. So let me just see if there's any other final comments tonight, and then I'll get up. And you can go back to last week's homework and then start working on the next. As I said, if you feel like you need more time, tell me you need more time. If you don't do the homework, well, then, I'm not losing, you're losing. So it's not it's not something I'm going to grade you on, and in the end I'm going to say, well, you didn't turn in your homework on time and your grade is X. There's no grade in this course. The grade is your ability to go on and earn the NCRW, and if you don't, then that just means you're going to study a little bit harder. So the homework is for you, it's not for me. All right. So I'm going to start at the top of the list and run down again. It's just easier that way to go up and down my list. So Christina, you get the floor first.
Thanks. We did cover a lot of ground, but you answered a lot of the questions I had, so I think I'm good right now.
Okay, good. Yeah, we always cover a lot of ground. You guys don't know how tired I am when we're done. Doug, how about you?
I'm good.
Everybody's just got all these ideas about what they're going to do for Candace, right?
Right.
Yeah. Sheila? Suzanne?
I'm fine, thank you.
Everybody's always fine. It's just like, get me off the phone. Tiffany?
I'm good.
they're gonna panic when you bring this stuff back to the Career Center, don't you?
I don't work in the Career Center at a college.
Oh, you don't? Where do you work?
I am self-employed, but
okay.
I teach communication studies at a community college.
Ah, well, this is very different. This is different stuff. Yeah, teach them marketing first, and then talk about resumes. How about you, Brenda? My new marketing pro.
No, just very interesting. Very interesting.
Okay, all right. Well, we'll see what you come up with then. And
okay.
Dawn? No, I already did, Dawn, didn't I? Did I ask you, Dawn? Yes, I think I did, didn't I? So I think I got everybody all set tonight. We're going to end a little bit early, and I hope everybody has a good evening and a wonderful weekend. Who knows what's coming? Just before class tonight, I quickly clicked on the news to see what was going on, and there is actually a blizzard warning up in Hawaii.
Hawaii.
Hawaii, they're calling for 6 to 10 inches of snow.
Oh my goodness.
Wow.
And it was 80 in Virginia yesterday.
Hey, wow.
No global warming, though. No global warming. All right. All right. Well, thank you, folks. I appreciate your time tonight. And holler in the week if you need me for anything. Otherwise, I'll talk to you next week.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Yep. Bye.